Good morning and welcome to Free Advice Friday. My name is Keri Barnum for New Shelves Books, and we are here to talk about publishing, marketing, and the business of being an author. You can join us any Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern by going to newshelves.com/FAF. And of course, we do put our replays up on YouTube, which is just youtube.com/New Shelves Books. So you can catch the replays there if you can't join us live. Today, I really wanted to kind of look back as this is our first meeting in 2024. I just wanted to look back at some of the sales stats and the interesting things of 2023, as well as there are so many predictions out there of what's happening or what's going to happen in publishing in 2024. So I wanted to share some of those predictions from different people and then give you my take on it. But first, let's start with just a look back at 2023. When we look back at 2023, U.S. adult fiction grew in deals and sales for the fifth straight year. So adult fiction is still coming in hot. There's still a lot of growth. Now, children's book deals and sales dropped. It's down 2 years straight. 6.2%. We do think part of this is possibly tied to the fact that now that children are back in school after long closures from the pandemic, we do think part of that is probably just that buying of books and things that we were doing to entertain kids while they were at home is slowing down a little bit. So we'll continue to kind of watch that. But children book deals and sales are down a little bit in the last 2 years. Translation rights have fallen down a little bit, less than 5%, but they're still down a little bit. There's a lot of speculation that part of that is just people trying to catch up from those long closures. So translations deals, unless it's something that the publisher is really keen to translate quickly and get it onto the market, they're not so much going out and looking for new books to translate, because a lot of companies lost people or they've downsized, and so they're running on a much smaller basis. I'm hearing that from a lot of people who work with translations, is that companies that were larger now have fewer people working there. They simply can't translate as much as fast, and so they're reasonably not buying as many translation rights. So those are down a little bit than what they've been before. But fiction and adult fiction overall is definitely, we're seeing big shifts. Fantasy is doing very well. Mystery, science, sci-fi and stuff is still up. And then in the fiction spectrum, we're seeing more self-help advice, relationship is kind of going up as well. So it's always interesting. We look at sales and we look at trends month by month and week by week, but it's always interesting to look back at an entire year to get an idea of what really did sell last year and how overall things went. I know we were down in sales at the beginning of the holiday season for 2023, but we actually, in that last run, that last week of holiday sales for 2023, we actually outpaced 2022, which is interesting just to see how that buying habits can change just from people pre-buying things in advance or, buying last minute. I think is very interesting. So we always keep kind of an eye on that. Now, looking ahead to 2024, there are a couple of predictions out there that I have found to be so very interesting. One of those is the predictions from Hidden Gems. And Hidden Gems is a company that has been around for a long time. They of course work in marketing, but a lot of you probably know them from their blog and from doing their ARC. So they have a fairly large ARC program where they send books out to readers, and I've recommended them multiple times. And every year they kind of do a prediction list. And so I wanted to pull that up of their top predictions for the year. Here we go. I had it on my screen and then I lost it, as I do. Oops. It was in my email too. Ended up multiple places. How do I lose it? I'm just that skilled. Oh my gosh. It's not Hidden Gems. It's Written Word Media. That's why. Sorry, you guys. Written Word Media, who you also know of because I have talked about them for their ebook promotions and things like that. So we know who Written Word is. It's Bargain Booksy and Free Booksy. I have apparently gotten no more put together in 2024 than I was in 2023, but still, here we go. Um, Top publishing trends as predicted by different people in the industry for 2024. I will actually drop in the link for anyone who wants to see this blog. You can find it at writtenwordmedia.com. It is in their blog section. I will drop it into the chat for anyone who wants to see it there. And then, of course, if you're watching kind of backwards, you can check that out. All right, so trends that are coming up or predicted in 2024. Trend number one that they are predicting is that quality becomes more important than ever. Essentially, the idea here is that for a long time, that was how many books can you pump out? Can you get out, 10 books in a year? There has been this huge shift of the more you have out, the more you can sell. The more you can sell, the more you can make. And while that is slightly true, that's not fully true. And that's kind of what people are seeing. Craig Martell, who is known for being a huge part of 20 books to 50K, actually did an experiment, I think it was in 2019, where he released 30 books in 30 weeks. And he is the first one to say, look, I put these books out as an experiment of like algorithms and could I get more momentum in sales if I put out that many books in that many weeks. And what he found was that they weren't his best books. He didn't take as much time with them. And so, he says and predicts, and I agree with him, that quality matters. And that while, yes, you want to put out consistent books, and the best way to sell your current book is to write your next one, that quality matters. So slowing down and actually putting out a quality product that has been edited well, proofread, that has a great cover and its marketing plan will get you further because you will get more readers. You'll have more success by doing things well than just pumping out books. So quality over quantity, although everyone pretty much is still saying that it's a great idea, especially if you can, to still write regularly and release regularly. Now, when we look at trade publishers, it's not uncommon for a well-known series to come out one every 2 years, maybe one every year, but it's still kind of out of far ways. Whereas with self-published authors or indie authors, we will often see them put out a book every quarter or twice a year. And there is something to not making people wait too long for your books to kind of piggyback on the marketing and the volume that you've already got going. But again, quality over quantity. And that is one prediction that I fully agree with. I don't think that that's new for 2024. I think that it is being reinforced in 2024. And I couldn't agree with that more. Publishing trend number two that they are predicting is that authors are going to build their brands and communities even more, and those who do so will be more successful. We've been saying that for a long time, so I agree with this, of course. I do think that authors are becoming more aware of how their brand and building their community matters. That, yes, you can just go on Amazon and sell books on Amazon, and yes, you can be put in a newsletter and do that, but building your own community and having that community to go back to time and time again is how you build a platform. That is how you build, a book that launches very quietly to kind of going beyond that. Yeah, it kind of is a family. That's part of it, is our readers are kind of a family. And so I do think more authors are aware of this and will continue to do this. So this is another one I agree with. I always recommend that you're building your brand in your community, but building your brand too. Like, people kind of want to know what to expect from you. This is why genre hopping can be so difficult, because if you write a romance book and then you write a horror novel and then you write a young adult book, you don't have a strong brand or a strong community. It's kind of all spread out, and it's hard to consistently build and grow and sell when you skip around like that, because your brand and community are confused. So I think that is a definite trend, and we can call it a trend. I think it's more just that this has been going on. Authors are realizing and being told over and over they need to do it. And so we're going to see more of that. This one, number 3, is promo stacking becomes the standard. And essentially, what they're saying is that rather than scheduling your own promos, like I'm going to do an ebook promo on June 17th for a book. Let me log in to Fussy Librarian and Bargain Booksy and those other 5. And I'm going to schedule them all in one day. Written word media is suggesting that promo stacking, where you work with one company that then get your books connected with all of them at one time, is going to become the norm, is going to become a trend. I can't say I disagree. However, I do feel like this is a little bit of a plug for themselves, because they started promo stacking as it's a service that they offer, and they started that in 2023. So will it be used more? I think so, but I think that was mostly just a plug, if I'm honest. So I wouldn't call that a trend. I think that, yes, it's something that people will use, but I wouldn't call it a trend. This one is quite interesting, that artificial intelligence will be embraced for book marketing. And so essentially a lot of reports, and we've talked about this a little bit, is that a lot of reports show that while many authors and creators are not for using AI for writing, many authors, publishers who have been or who have been polled have said that using AI for some of their marketing needs, to streamline things, to write marketing copy, they're comfortable with. And I do think we will continue to see that more and more in 2024. I won't go into that so much. I think it started certainly in 2023. I won't go into it too much, because we've already talked about ways to use AI as an author in marketing, and how you can and maybe don't want to use it. I think AI everything is still going to be a trend in 2024. I do think we are going to see more publishers and companies owning that they're using AI in their marketing. I think they're already doing it, but I think they're going to own it a little bit more. And I do think that a lot of authors will realize one of the ways that they can get more content out there will be to use AI. I think that what we will have to be careful of as a author community, as publishers, as marketers, I think what we have to be careful of is that when using AI to create marketing, it does make it easier. But I think what we'll have to be careful of is to make sure that we're not using it straight, that we're still putting our personality, our imprint on it, our humanness on it, to make what AI puts out more appealing. So it's kind of that idea of quality over quantity. It's not enough just to put out a bunch of graphics and throw them out there. We need something from your personality, from who you are, to add to it. And so I think while artificial intelligence will be used in marketing, I hope that we are smart enough to temper it with the human aspects, and that we take a good idea and make it great with that personal touch, rather than just pumping out a bunch of AI stuff that maybe floods the market but doesn't work as effectively. But we'll see on that. But I do overall agree that's going to be a trend. The next one is that the TikTok ad market matures, which we kind of expect. Now, I will say there's been some speculation that the TikTok ad market, which is pretty new now, there's been a lot of speculation that as TikTok adds, that what will happen is that organic reach will start to go down. Now, we've seen this on pretty much every social media platform. When they're building, there's a lot of organic reach. You're seeing a lot of connections. And then more and more, as ad opportunities show up, you have to pay to reach. We're seeing that on Facebook. We've seen it on Facebook for years, that you can reach some people on Facebook organically, but if you want to reach them, you have to pay Facebook. Keeping in mind that these companies are businesses, that they are building platforms as a business to make money. So I expect that we will see that. I do think that as TikTok ads become more popular, more people will use them, because I think they'll have to. So I think we'll see some of that. What I don't think we'll see is that I don't think we'll see ads for everything on TikTok. I think that TikTok has a very strong market for women or females, anyone identifying as female within a certain age range, typically between 25 to 45. And in a younger generation, those teens to 20-year-olds are definitely using it in all genders. And so I think that we will see a definite swing, still what we've been seeing, sci-fi, fantasy, a lot of romance and young adult titles I think we'll still see on TikTok. But I can't say that I think it's going to become the next ad platform where you reach everyone. Keeping in mind that a lot of readers typically tend to be 50 and older. So 50 and older, because a lot of the time that's when people have time to read. That's where we have a lot of readers. This, in my opinion, is why Facebook continues to be such a great advertising platform, because statistically, older people tend to hang out on Facebook. And so I think that TikTok will mature for ads. I think they will start to monetize more through their ads. Will it become something everyone uses? I'm still going to say no. And I do agree. I think it was somewhere in here that as TikTok ad market matures and they start charging for ads more, I think people will have to be very careful about how much time they spend on TikTok trying to get organic reach. I think that's going to be the first step, is that people are going to reach a little bit less with TikTok and they're going to try harder. They're going to do more content. They're going to try to be on the app more, because the app currently feeds on your interaction as well as your videos. And I think people are going to put more and more time in it. And there's going to become a line in the sand where you either have to put ad dollars in, or you're going to just have it be a time suck where it's no longer worth it for a business venture for authors. But we'll see. I think we've all kind of seen this coming. And I do agree with that prediction overall. This one kind of ties into AI. Number 6, copyright and fraud protection becomes more important. Absolutely. I think so. I think we've been talking about this for a long time, is that as AI happens and more possible infringement, and as people are able to use things, it's always a weighted scale, right? And I think that copyright and fraud protection has always been important. I think that these things will continue to be important, possibly more than ever, just because of the nature of generative AI and people, just the nature of people, to be honest. So I think that's something that's always important, that we should know about copyright. We should be aware if we need to protect it, or that kind of thing. So I do agree with this. I think a lot of it is going to come down, though, to the decisions in the courts about AI and what's allowed and what's not allowed. We don't know that yet, which I've talked about, so I won't get into. But overall, I agree with that prediction as well. Number 7, authors refocus on the long game. I think this ties into number 1 about quality over quantity. It's overall the idea of building a big business plan, not just, writing to market right now. What can I sell right now? What's trending, but authors looking at an overall platform and build. I think that's kind of been around for a while. I think in some ways it's going to trend back in for the indie market, but I think it's been around overall, especially in traditional publishing and authors. I mean, traditional publishing, we've talked about that, how long it takes. And I think the long game is what most traditional authors or authors who are hoping for traditional deals have been going for the entire time. I think that indies have, in some ways, not everyone, but a lot of indies have been swept up in the right to market, the rapid release, and that kind of thing. And I do think that there was a lot of that going on, and we might refocus on the overarching whole. And also the idea of, how much can you do? How much can one person do in a year? 30 books in 30 weeks. I mean, he wrote them before, Craig Martell, going back to that one, he wrote them before and then released them slowly. But the idea that anyone wrote that many books he didn't write them all in 30 weeks, but he wrote them all in a pretty short amount of time. I do think that indie authors who have been very successful with rapid releasing, with writing to market, I think they're realizing, and I saw this even in 2022 when I went to the 20 Books conference in Vegas, so many authors who were successful, who had 6 figures in their writing, so many of those authors were talking about burnout They were talking about health issues. They were talking about missing out on life. And I think that we know being successful and having a full-time career as an author or in publishing can be hard. It can be taxing. Publishing has some of the highest burnout rates for work, and some of the lowest pay, not just as authors, but in publishing has some of the lowest pay. And so I think that we certainly see a lot of burnout. And I think that authors who were writing so much in marketing, reaching for that success, I think they found it, but they found it at a cost. And so I do agree, and I hope it's a correct prediction. I do agree, and I hope that authors realize that they are a whole person, that yes, putting to market and making money is important. And yes, if you're a full-time author, you need to write, but also taking care of themselves. I know that's one of my, my goals for 2024. So I think I agree with that prediction overall, and I hope that it comes to pass, this one in particular. Number 8, subscription models gain popularity. So I think this is semi-true. This is kind of not just subscription models in the sense of like Kindle Unlimited and things like that, but people doing things like Patreon and Substack and doing subscriptions for individual places. I'm not totally sold on this one. I think that we saw kind of a rise of that, and there will always be people who will have different subscriptions to support different artists. But I think authors and artists will continue to build subscription platforms, but will people continue buying them? I don't know. I don't know that people will, in a time where many people feel like the economy is tight. There's a lot of inflation with groceries and things like that. I don't know that people will have a bunch of different subscriptions. If anything, in some ways, I feel like people will start to evaluate all of their subscriptions and pare down. Now, on the flip side, when you're only doing $2 a month for this, author, and $2 a month here, maybe $5 here, it doesn't feel like a lot. But I'm not sold on that one. I could be wrong. I mean, we'll come back next year and find out. But as far as subscriptions, models gaining popularity, I think they may gain popularity for authors to try them. I'm not sure that they'll gain popularity with readers. But that's just me. That's my opinion. Feel free to argue with me in the chat here. And I could be wrong. We'll come back later this year and see, but not sold on that one, number 8. Number 9, controversy continues on social media, essentially just saying, we've seen this. It's Twitter and now it's X. We had Mastodon, which kind of is not even talked about anymore. There's Blue Sky, there's Threads. Facebook and Instagram kind of weathered the storm. TikTok had a lot of controversy when it first came out, but it's here to stay. Will social media kind of continue to go? Yeah, I mean, I think social media will, because there's still a lot of power play. I think that a lot of companies are realizing the potential of social media for profit. And so do I think it'll continue on? Some people are still diehard fans of Twitter. Jane Friedman, I believe, has said she's left Twitter and she's just using Threads. And she was, she had made her business on Twitter. So will there be some back and forth? Yes. I think that there has been a little bit of a void, and everyone's trying to fill it. Where's that going to go? I'm not quite sure. But I think we will continue to see people who value the opportunity of social media. I think we'll still see people and businesses and companies trying to fill that void and take a piece of that market. So who knows what'll actually happen on there. But I agree with that, but I don't think it will necessarily. I think there will be continued controversy on social media. Goodreads was like a big thing. Now, in the sense of who's going to have what place, I mean, I guess so, a little bit. I don't think that's huge. I think what will continue is drama on social media. Drama has always been on social media, and I don't think that's going away. We talk about review bombing on Goodreads, which is considered social media. We talk about, these big arguments on social media. that is what has driven social media. I mean, literally, if you look at what has driven social media, it has been controversy. Twitter was mostly news and things like that. However, what drove it was when controversy hit the news, and there was a lot of it. When you talk about Facebook, yes, people go for pictures of kids and different things like that, but there's a lot of controversy as politics and religion. I mean, people argue about everything. The posts that actually take off the most and get the most views are the ones that get the most comments, and nothing fills up a comment thread more than an argument about whether a dress is black or white or blue, or whether or not someone should or shouldn't be in office. I mean, nothing goes up more than that. So yes, drama is going to stay on social media because people are using, and I've said this before, people are using social media as the current coffee shop. Not very often do people just go into a coffee shop, sit down, and start talking to their neighbor, or reading a newspaper, and, oh, did you hear about this? We don't have that kind of communication often in today's society. And so we don't have that coffee shop or that town feel of communicating. And so what we're doing is we're doing that communication, we're doing those arguments behind screens on social media, which in some ways means that we can connect with all sorts of people all over the world, but it also means that we have a layer of protection when we speak to people, which brings a lot of drama to the table. It also means that, I mean, when you see my face, you hear my voice, you get a feeling for my intention and my personality. You don't get that through a screen. So if you don't know someone and they say something, it could have been something they were, typing out where they were making dinner with a kid crying at their leg, and they don't mean anything by it. They're just trying to get it out quickly. And you could take it completely a different way because you didn't have that type of facial and verbal interaction. So I think people will try to fill the hole, but drama on social media is not going away. I mean, it literally is what drives it partially, and I don't think that's going to change. Now, I will say for all of you here on this call, listen to me. Controversy is fine about which cover is best and is the dress blue. Stay away from controversy in the sense online. Just do yourself a favor. Do not talk about politics or religion. Don't get into a controversial fight about it. Now, if you are a Christian author and that is your platform, yes. However, are we going to get into a comment war with someone about who's going to hell? Absolutely not. Let's not do that. I think there's some things that you just can't win. And I was talking to someone, who was it? I was talking to someone, Russ, an author I'm working with, and he was talking about someone he'd seen in an interview a long time ago who basically is in public facing. She's on TV, and someone said, how do you just maintain composure with all the things people say about you or in interviews and things like that? And she just said, I don't argue with idiots. So who's the idiot? Don't know, don't care. But arguing with anyone over things like that kind of makes you the idiot. So don't be the idiot. Goes for myself as well. And then finally, number 10, their prediction is publishing continues to see consolidation. And this is just the point that as we have seen, the large publishers have kind of slowly been sold off to each other and consolidating. We saw that happen just last year as Simon & Schuster was acquired by KKR. Penguin Random House has tried to acquire different publishers. I think they just acquired Hay House and maybe parts of Source Books. It's starting to kind of go in. Drafted Digital acquired Smashwords and different things like that. I think that'll be true. I think that there will continue to be consolidation. Of course, then we have the talks about monopoly that are going on, and that ties into lawsuits with Amazon and all sorts of things. So I do think we'll continue to see that. I do agree with that trend, and I think it's one of those things. So those are kind of my takes. And again, I want to give full credit to that list. It is from Written Word Media. You can find the full blog article with kind of quotes from all sorts of different people in the publishing industry. You can find that at writtenwordmedia.com. So I kind of borrowed that just to talk about my opinions of their list, but I do want to give full credit to them as credit is due. And now I know we had some talk. Yeah, Bob is talking about how every time he does a cartoon published that's even vaguely political, that he loses about a dozen subscribers. And it doesn't matter which way, it doesn't matter what you say. Just there are some things that you just can't win on. So I think it definitely happens. Yeah, let's see. Trying to monetize X, but my articles are free. Yeah, I mean, monetizing social media, I think, can always happen. I think we'll see a lot of people. We saw this happening in 2020, and it has continued. It often is kind of talked about creators or content creators, but monetizing social media is something that's been trending up for the last several years and will absolutely continue to trend. It's just smart. If you're going to put your time into creating content for social media and that's what drives you and makes you happy and brings you an audience, they're selling different products like a book, or, I've seen all sorts of things like cooking and pots and pans and all the things. But yes, it makes sense that people are also trying to actually monetize on their content on social media. Absolute sense. And I think there was a question about how do people get in these news articles? So some of these articles where some of the articles like this that come up as far as predictions, sometimes the person writing the article will go directly to someone like Jane Friedman or Craig Martell, and they will actually ask for their opinion, or if they have any specific predictions, and they will actually ask them. Sometimes they'll put out a poll to their mailing list. Sometimes they literally will just see someone else post their predictions and they'll say, okay, I'm using this as one of the predictions and I'm going to quote them and give them credit. So there are a couple of ways that those types of articles can be written. So lots of different ways. And of course, they're looking for sources that have some type of platform or experience so that when they say, hey, this is a prediction, it's not like, hey, Joe, who's never written a book, is predicting that we will only have blue covers for the next year. They're looking for someone who has some type of platform or experience or following, so that their quote, their prediction carries weight. Let's see. Okay. Yes. So would you elaborate on how articles get into the news? For instance, I'm using Google Alerts for key terms in my topic. Whenever I publish an article to my blog with terms or keywords I'm targeting, it never gets picked up national news. However, I've noticed that authors and independent articles get picked up by larger news outlets. So sometimes these things are going viral in other ways. They're going viral on social media or people are talking about it. Sometimes the people who are writing on their own blog actually also write for, they may write for that news station, or they may write and have some connection and it's being picked up that way. And sometimes they are actually sending it to editorial. I've seen that several times where someone writes a blog or a piece and they put it out there, and then they physically take that blog and that link and they send it to different people they think might pick it up. Sometimes it starts at local news, some larger, but I would say very rarely does it happen organically unless something goes viral just, by doing that. Yeah, and Cheryl Johnson has mentioned several times Susan Shapiro's Byline Bible with some practical steps for publication in a news outlet. So if you're pitching news outlets, that's completely different. But if you're talking about your own blog where you're writing your content and then, hoping it gets picked up by news outlets, it's a little bit different of a process. And that is still, but you're still pitching. You're pitching a byline to different news outlets. Another place you can look is HARO, Help a Reporter Out. Help a Reporter Out is a newsletter place. There's a paid option and a free option, but essentially you get a newsletter every day that has where reporters are asking for people to interview or quotes or have opinions on. And it's just this whole list of, need an expert to talk about flea medication for Chewy, need an expert to talk about publishing for Publishers Weekly, whatever it may be. And so then you can essentially email them or pitch yourself and your answers. And sometimes you can get quoted that way, although you're not writing the article, you can get quoted and put into the news that way, which maybe you're in. As far as freelance Spanish translators, I have not used any personally myself in that. I have heard about BabbleCube, and so that's probably where I would start. But I am not your best person to ask because I haven't personally used any, I'm afraid. Uh, yeah. What's my take on Spotify and them offering audiobooks? Jennifer is asking. So we've talked about this a little bit as far as Spotify and audiobooks. I think it's a great opportunity to reach people who maybe are more podcast people or who are listening to music who just need something else to listen to. And I think it's a great opportunity for um kind of reaching a new market. Now, I think it's funny that you should ask, though, because in Jane Friedman's hot sheet, which came out on Wednesday, love Jane Friedman, by the way. I get her hot sheet, which is her paid newsletter. And it's one of the very few that I actually pay for and subscribe and recommend. But her prediction I thought was funny for 2024 is that not going to be much of anything, that people who are on the paid subscription with Spotify who get the 15 free hours of audiobooks will listen, but that they're not going to buy any more audiobooks from Spotify, that they will wait for their 15 hours every month. They're not going to pay for audiobook hours or outright for audiobooks, was Jane's prediction. And that people who aren't listening to audiobooks are not going to be converted. um I don't fully agree with her. Sorry, Jane. I think that there will be people who have the subscription who will listen to the audiobooks on the subscription and then wait for their 15 hours. Now they're still getting paid. And as of right now, the pay is not bad from what I hear for those streaming hours. So that's still a new way to get more income, more people who maybe weren't listening to audiobooks before. So I don't think we can discount that. But as far as people who weren't listening to audiobooks before won't listen now, I don't think that's true. I think that there will be some people. Now, are they just going to stumble upon and start looking for audiobooks? Not necessarily. However, as people hear about it and they say, oh, I could get these streaming hours, I think some people are going to listen on those streaming hours and go, wow, I didn't know I liked audiobooks. And then they're going to start purchasing more. Now, will they purchase them directly from Spotify? I don't know. Maybe they become an Audible subscriber, or maybe they start buying from Chirp. Maybe they start buying from different places. But I do think that there will be some level of people who didn't know that they liked audiobooks or didn't give them a try as much, who might now. Now, that's my personal take. I don't think it's going to make Spotify the leader in audiobook sales, but I do think it's going to have correlation impact. I do think that it's going to impact in different ways and reach different people. And I say that as someone who, I have my husband, but also multiple friends who are Spotify listeners, who are music listeners, who aren't typically, well, my husband listens to a lot of audiobooks, but I have a lot of people who are on Spotify who aren't necessarily audiobook listeners, that when I'm like, oh, did you know you can listen to books? No, they're like, oh, no, I never do audiobooks. And then they go listen and then they're like, hey, where can I get more cheap audiobooks? And I send them to church. So I agree partially with that, but not fully. But we'll see what happens next year and see what's right and what's not. And, you know, I I'm not sure that one, but that was a good question. All right, let's see. Book signings. Is there a secret to getting approval? There is no big secret, Heather. I think the thing to book signings is that when you ask, you need to not only pitch yourself in the book, but how it will benefit the store. I'm a local. I have a lot of people who've been asking for the book, and I'd like to be able to sign and sell to them locally rather than sending them online. Don't mention Amazon, just say online. They'll know. I think it's also important, is your book set up for bookstore distribution? I mean, that is part of it, does your book have a full trade discount, which is 40% or 55% if you're on Ingram Spark? Is your book returnable? Do they do consignment? Are you even offering consignment? Sometimes they'll say, your book's not on the terms that we take books on, but you can come in and consign your books. So I think that can help. It can also help if you find a couple of either local authors or authors who write in the same genre as you and pitch a book signing event that is more than one of you. Go to the local Barnes and Noble and say, hi, myself and 3 other local children's book authors would be very interested in coming in, maybe doing a joint story time and a book signing. Is that something you might be interested in? So kind of pairing yourself with someone else can sometimes be the key to getting a yes. But overall, it's, have you supported that bookstore? Do you have the right terms? And how are you going to benefit them? Those are the things to keep in mind. Also, keep in mind the time of year. Typically, you need to pitch something like this or ask for a book signing months in advance. And anytime around the holidays is not usually a yes. So keep that in mind. I would be saying that if you're looking for an event, don't pitch them for another week or two. And when you do, pitch them for like March or April and see if they have any openings and go from there. I've been running Facebook ads for about 2 months for my memoir at $20 a day. Since running the ads, my Amazon bestseller rankings have come up into top 100 and top 50 on and off in 3 categories. My sales, however, aren't up that much. How is that possible given that the Amazon bestseller rank is based mainly on sales? That is a really good question, Beth. And all right, let me get my soapbox out. Here's the thing, is that when we look at the Amazon bestseller ranking, it can help us know if something's selling. But you can make number 1 in an Amazon category, because that's a category ranking. You can make number 1 with as little as 1 or 2 sales, depending on the category. And so it depends on how many people are in that category, how many books are in that category, how many books they're selling on average per day, per week. It also depends on how many book sales happen that hour, because the category rankings literally are calculated hourly. So you could have sold not many books, but maybe you sold 2 books in the same hour. The other guys haven't sold the book since last week. So you don't necessarily have to be selling a ton of books to rank as an Amazon category bestseller. I don't want to drag anyone down. I'm not saying you shouldn't be excited or proud of being ranked high in an Amazon category list. You should absolutely be excited and proud about that if it's a good fit for your books. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're selling. This is one reason why I have such a huge problem. Sorry, this came up this week, so it's a little bit fresh. This is why I have such a huge problem with people who sell these big marketing campaigns for a guaranteed number 1 Amazon bestseller. I saw one just this week, $5,000 to have a guaranteed Amazon number 1 bestseller, where they give you the ranks. They put up an ebook promotion, which maybe cost them $200, and then they guarantee that you will hit a number 1 bestseller, not number 1 bestseller in Kindle, but number 1 bestseller in a category. And that you'll hit number 1 bestseller doesn't mean it'll be a good fit for your book. It could be in calligraphy. Maybe your book, I don't know, maybe your book has a handwritten letter in it somewhere. But it's manipulation of the categories. And then, people feel really good about it because, well, I'm a number 1 best-selling author. I'm now going to be selling forever and ever. I can retire and go buy my yacht now. And that's simply not the truth. That hitting a number one bestseller is exciting. You should be proud. You should share it. But hitting number one bestseller in a category does not mean your books are selling well in terms of quantity, and it does not mean your books will sell for the long term. As I mentioned, a bestseller ranking only lasts for an hour. Every hour, those tallies are recalculated. And so this is why I encourage people, look at your bestseller ranking. Absolutely. However, that is something that feels good. It doesn't necessarily tell you about the health of your book. Looking at your categories and how competitive they are, how do you rank when you're selling no books? Now, there's something to being smart with your category optimization. You want to be in niche but honest categories. It's part of the algorithm that can help you out. But being high on a category does not mean you're necessarily selling. And your goal overall, yeah, being a bestseller in anything is cool, right? But overall, you want to sell books. You want to make a viable option where people are buying your books and reading your books and loving everything you put your hard work into. And so that's how it works, is that if it's not currently selling a lot, you could sell 2 books in an hour. Maybe someone sold 2 books in a day, but one was in morning and one was at night, and you sold 2 books in an hour. That would put you higher up in the ranking. And so when doing our ads, I think it's something we can look at, especially if you're a traditionally published author and you're running ads and you don't have access to your sales day by day. I think that's something you can use as a meter. But I would very much caution you from running ads just to hit that, because overall, look at your numbers and make sure you're not spending more than you're making to hit that bestseller rank, but not really selling. So that's one of those things I see often. I have literally, again, I saw a program this week, $5,000 for, it was that bestseller thing, the guaranteed bestseller thing, and like 1 or 2 other small things. And it just kills me, because it doesn't mean the book's going to sell after that. It means that they're going to run a price promotion, and it's cool, but it's not necessarily an indicator of true sales success. So I don't say that to be harsh. I say that more because even if you don't make it on a bestseller list, that doesn't mean that you're not successful and that you're not doing well. And now I'll step off my soapbox and I'll sorry, you hit a note apparently that had just again come up this week. And I've seen a lot of authors literally put thousands of dollars into these campaigns. And then they come to me afterwards and go, I don't understand. Why isn't my book selling? I was a number one bestseller. I have the badge, and it just isn't everything they had hoped it would be. Let's see. All right. I'm glad. Again, I say it from a place of caring about all of you and caring about the community we've built. So, all right. I've recently watched a video on Ingram Spark. 2 questions. Number 1, would you mark a no on returnable, non-returnable option? Number 2, would you choose a 45 or 55% trade discount? Here's the thing. I can't answer that for you. You have to decide which discount you're willing to live with. Now, I will say that if you want to pitch your book to bookstores or retail stores, you need to put your book at a 55% discount on Ingram Spark for the retailer to get a 40% discount. Remember that Ingram Spark is your printer. They get paid for printing, but then Ingram, the wholesaler, gets, and the distributor partner there, they get 15%, which means the retail partner who then sells the book only gets a 40% discount. And that's what they require for in-store sales. So if you're hoping to work with retailers or work with bookstores, you really need your books at a 55% discount. Now, if you know you're mostly going to sell on Amazon and you're not pitching bookstores or trying to do signings and you're focusing on libraries, doesn't matter as much. Go with the 40% discount, and that'll give them an end 25% discount. So part of it is looking at your numbers and your goals. The chances of your book going viral at a bookstore, if you're not pitching it to them, is pretty low. So that may not be something you're concerned about. But if you're pitching for book signings, you need to have that trade discount. So that would be 55%. And as far as returnable, it's kind of the same thing, is that for a returnable book, when you set the book as returnable, just know it could be returned to you. And that means that you could face losses. That means that you could even owe them money if enough books get returned. So it is a risk. But same thing, a lot of bookstores will not take a book that's not returnable. So are you pitching to bookstores? If so, you may need to put on returnable, but then you have to evaluate whether or not you could handle returns, the cost of returns or getting books back, and what that means for you personally in your business plan. So it needs to be a personal decision. Or you could say, same thing, I'm not pitching to bookstores. I'm focusing on Amazon and libraries, or maybe in-person events where I am, selling books directly. So I'm not going to worry about returns, and I'm going to say no and give myself that safety net. It is really up to you, your goals, and your plan for your business. But those are kind of the deciding factors I would consider when deciding one way or the other. David, I believe you might be thinking about ebook distribution, which is separate. I don't think so, but I will look into that, David. All right, guys, we are right at 11 o'clock. I know we got 2 questions that I didn't really get to. If you send those to me on email, I will answer them next week, or if it's something I have a resource for, I will point you towards that. But thank you, everyone, for being here. It was fun to kind of go through the predictions of written word media, and to talk about, what the trends and predictions are for 2024, and to share what I thought about them. Love to hear if you agree or disagree. You can always send me an email, and we will absolutely talk again in 2024. Of course we will, because it's now 2024. Thanks for being here, you guys. I'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.